Hi folks! You know that feeling when you're building a scene in Unreal and you just wish there was a magic button to make roads, forests, or entire detailed environment appear instantly? Or maybe you've tried diving into Unreal Engine's procedural content generation tools and thought, nope, too complicated for my brain right now. Well, today I'm showing you something that genuinely feels like that magic button. Dash from Polygonflow. Polygonflow graciously provided me with this product, and I'm genuinely blown away. What's truly amazing isn't just how fast and easy it was to build this specific procedural road environment you're seeing, which by the way, we're going to create together in this video. Dash pretty much eliminates the steep learning curve of traditional PCG in Unreal, making powerful procedural workflows super accessible with just a few clicks. Plus, it has other cool features like an integrated content browser and an AI assistant. Before we build out this road, we'll cover some basic tools in Dash to get comfy with how it works. So let's jump right in. Before we get too deep, just a quick heads up, if you're keen to grab Dash for yourself, you'll find the purchase link down in the description below. Okay, so to get started, you can simply click on the Dash icon here and a handy ribbon of tools instantly pops up. The very first option you'll see is Content. Click that and then select Content Browser. Dash's incredibly powerful built-in content hub appears. This isn't just any content browser. It's designed to streamline how you find and manage your assets. It's got a few distinct areas. You've got Fab, which lets you download assets directly. Then there's Quixel Contents, and this part is awesome. All the assets you've ever downloaded from Quixel Bridge are automatically integrated here. Let me show you. I will quickly grab some random 3D asset from Quixel Bridge, and just like that, it's instantly and seamlessly added to Dash's content browser. No manual importing needed, super efficient. You also get direct access to Polyheaven's vast library and an IES library for all your lighting profiles, which is incredibly useful. But arguably, one of the coolest features is the project library. This lets you easily add your own project assets into Dash's centralized library, and what makes it awesome is the AI tag feature. You select your assets, hit compute, and Dash's AI intelligently tags them, making them permanently searchable and accessible right here. No more tedious manual tagging and no need to constantly transfer assets between different projects. Thanks to these AI tags, you can find anything with a simple search, no matter where it's stored. Now, the content browser alone, along with the AI assistant and all of Dash's other features, could easily be an entire video series on its own, so I won't be covering every single detail in this video to keep it concise. However, I highly recommend checking out Polygonflow's official videos, specifically on the content browser and the AI assistant. I'll make sure those links are in the description too, so you don't miss them. Alright, now let's bring some life into our scene using Dash's scattering tool. I'm gonna search for plants here in the content browser, and then I will select a few different types like these ferns and flowers by simply holding down Shift. Now here is the magic part. While holding down the control key, I will just drag these selected assets directly into our scene. A little option pops up, scatter here, and once I click that, Dash instantly scatters them across the surface where I drop them. A new floating window will also appear, giving us immediate control over this scattered group. From this handy window, we can instantly tweak parameters like density to control how many plants appear, and min scale and max scale to add natural variation in their size. Super quick, super easy. Let's do the same thing for some rocks to ground our scene. I will search for rocks, select a few varieties, and again control drag them right onto the ground to scatter them. Just like with the plants, we can adjust their density and scale to get the perfect distribution. Now here is where things get really exciting. I want to make sure my plants don't grow right up against the rocks. I want a clear zone around them, so I will select our plant's scatter group again, and first I will pin its control window here so it doesn't disappear. Then I will scroll down to find and expand the proximity mask section and bring up the proximity table. Inside this table, I will add a new layer. Now I will select our rocks scatter group in the scene, and with them selected, click the little plus icon here to add them to this new layer. You'll notice nothing happens yet. That's because the proximity mask needs to know how far away it should act and what it should do. By default, the mask often wants to include areas near the objects. To create that empty zone, we need to increase the distance parameter for our rock layer. Watch this. As I increase the distance, the plants begin to magically recede, creating that clear buffer around the rocks. If I were to invert this mask, it would do the opposite, making the plants only appear near the rocks. So why is this proximity mask feature so powerful? Imagine trying to manually place every single plant to avoid rocks or hand paint exclusion masks for every asset. It would take ages. This tool allows you to procedurally control where your scattered assets appear relative to others. Now let's talk about ground surfaces. I'm gonna grab 3 different ground surface material from the content browser here. Watch what happens when I drag them directly onto our ground plane. And instead of just applying one, I will select the apply blend material option. This instantly creates a smart blend material, and a new edit material window pops up, giving us an immense amount of control. Right away, I can tweak the R weight and G weight to find the perfect balance between our first 2 ground material, seamlessly blending them together. And it gets even cooler. We can use the B weight to add realistic puddles if we want, or introduce a snow layer with S weight, or even a rain material effect using T weight. It's like having instant control over your entire landscape's look. Of course, we can control the overall tiling of the material too, but here's a truly awesome part. We can add displacement. Traditionally, enabling displacement often requires setting up nanite for your meshes and ensuring tessellation is enabled in your project settings. But thanks to Dash's integrated search bar, it's super easy. I just type nanite and the option to enable nanite for actor appears, a single click, and our mesh is ready. The same goes for setting up tessellation for the project. Just type it in and Dash guides you. This search bar isn't limited to just these options. You can search for a vast array of settings and features, bringing them right to your fingertips. How cool is that? Besides basic tiling control, Dash also offers an incredibly useful enable break up tiling option. This is brilliant for breaking up that annoying, repetitive pattern you often see on large surfaces, making your ground material look far more natural and organic. We can also control UVs and many other parameters to dial in the perfect look. Now, to really highlight some other cool masking capabilities, I'm gonna bring in a large hero rock formation into our scene. Now, I want to scatter some flowers on this rock, specifically in certain areas. So I will select some flowers from the content browser and simply drag them directly onto my large rock. Just like before, I will choose scatter here to apply them. Let's boost their density and scale a bit so they're clearly visible. For clarity, I'm just gonna quickly hide our previous scattered elements so we can really focus on what's happening on the rock. Now let's explore feature masking. The first slider here is angle mask. This is super handy for controlling where your scattered assets appear based on the angle of the surface. For example, you could make flowers only grow on flat tops of rock or specifically on steep sides. Next, we have minimum height mask. As the name suggests, this allows you to set a minimum height threshold so your scattered elements will only appear above a certain point on the object. useful for things like snow caps or moss that doesn't grow at the base. And conversely, we have maximum height mask lets you control the opposite, ensuring assets only scatter below a certain height, perfect for details that collect in crevices or at the bottom. Then we have add mask and remove mask. These give you manual control, letting you simply paint areas directly onto the surface, so forcing scattering or to completely exclude it. And for a more organic, less uniform distribution, there's the noise mask, which introduces procedural noise to create natural looking variations in your scattered pattern. Moving on to border masking. This section is fantastic for controlling how your scattered elements behave near the edges of the object. Border offset lets you define how far in or out from the border the mask applies. Min and max further refine the fall off of the border, and noise adds organic variation to make that border look less uniform and more natural. This level of granular control is incredible. And finally, a super cool bonus that Dash handles automatically. As you're working, it keeps your Unreal Engine outliner incredibly organized. No more cluttered scenes with hundreds of individual assets. Dash neatly groups everything, making your project clean and easy to navigate. It's a small detail, but it makes a huge difference in workflow. Next up, let's look at the incredible curve tool. This allows you to draw splines directly in your scene, which then become powerful procedural paths for scattering, creating meshes, or even deforming terrain. It's fantastic for defining specific flow or placement of assets with precise control. I will head to the Create tab, expand the Curve section, and select Draw Curve. Now I can simply draw a path directly on our scene, defining its shape. As I draw, I can easily control the distance between the points and the overall smoothness of the curve, giving us full artistic control. Now, let's hide our other scattered elements for a moment to keep things clear. With our newly drawn curve selected, I will go back to the content browser, grab some ground rocky meshes, and then while holding Control, drag them onto the scene. This time, I will choose Scatter on selection, and instantly those rocky meshes are scattered right along our curve. I'm going to change the density mode to count and set a specific number of meshes I want along the curve. We can also adjust their scale just like with our previous scatters. Now here is a super cool feature, parallel width. I'll expand this section, and as I increase the distance parameter, you'll see the meshes automatically spread out, creating a wider path on both sides of our curve. I will just bring them down a bit so they're sitting nicely on the ground. After a bit more tweaking of scale and density, let's unhide our main scattered rocks and plants. And immediately we see a problem. Our neatly laid path is interrupted by the other rocks and plants that were already there. No problem at all. This is where Dash's power truly shines. I will select our main rocks scatter group again and pin its window. Then I will add our new path meshes as a proximity object, and by increasing the distance parameter here, we push the rocks away from our path, clearing that area. And to make the rocks outside our path feel more dense, I'll quickly increase their overall density settings. Now let's adjust the plants. I will select their group and head into their proximity mask table. Remember earlier I had inverted this mask for the rocks to push plants away from them? Now, to have a bit more plants intentionally appear around those rocks, I'll simply tweak the distance parameter for that existing inverted mask. This expands the area where plants are encouraged to grow near the rocks. Finally, heading back to our rocks group, I'll tweak the width slider on that proximity mask we set up for the path. The width controls the transition gradient of the mask, meaning how sharp or soft the blend is from where elements are completely excluded to where they appear at full density. It's fantastic for fine-tuning that visual border. See how easily we can jump between these parameters and sliders, constantly refining and tweaking to get exactly the look we want. Now, to add a bit more life to our path, I'm heading back to the content browser to find some flowers. I will scatter these directly onto our ground meshes that we set parallel to the curve. Just a quick drag and drop, and then I'll tweak their density and scale until they look just right. Now, for the main path itself, I want to define stone floor. I will select a stone floor mesh from the content browser which I downloaded from Quixel Bridge and drag it onto our main curve. Choosing scatter on selection, I'm setting the density mode to count and adjusting the number of stones so there's a small gap between each one. The idea is to fill these gaps and the spaces between the stone path and our existing ground rocks with grass. So I'll grab some grass from the content browser and scatter it across the floor. After adjusting its density and scale, I'll head down to its proximity mask section and pin the window. I will add our stone floor meshes as a proximity object and increase the distance. Initially, this makes the grass grow around the stones, even a bit inside them, but I don't want the grass all over the entire floor, only in those gaps. So I decided to invert the mask. This means instead of pushing grass away from the stones, it now encourages grass to grow near them. However, this initially led to grass growing a bit inside the stones too. By tweaking the distance parameter, I controlled how far around the stones the grass would grow, and then I fine-tuned the width option. The width controls the gradient or fall-off of the mask, allowing me to precisely push the grass out from inside the stones and contain it neatly within the gaps. While there are many ways to create masks, this approach worked perfectly for me and I was really happy with the results. And this brings us the true power of PCG created with Dash. With all these procedural layers and masks set up, if I decide to move the points of our initial curve around, or even delete some points and completely reshape the path, look at this, everything reacts instantly. The stone path, the grass filling the gaps, the scattered rocks and plants reseeding around it, it all updates in real time. This level of dynamic control means you can iterate on your environments with incredible speed and flexibility, which is an absolute game changer. Now that we're familiar with some of Dash's basic tools and functions, let's create a road scene just like the one you saw in the intro. You'll be amazed at how easily we can achieve this with Dash. So let's start from a completely clean slate. First, I will create a new landscape. While Dash does have its own impressive terrain creation tool, I won't be covering it here today to keep things focused. Perhaps in a future video we'll dive into that. Next, I'm gonna draw a new curve that will define the path of our road. I will set the distance between the points, then easily smooth it out to get the exact shape we want. With our curve selected, I'll head back to the Dash ribbon and simply click the Create Road tool. And after that, we need to introduce this curve to the road tool, and instantly a road mesh pops into existence, conforming perfectly to our drawn curve. We can easily set the overall width of the road right here. To give our road its surface, I will select an asphalt material from Dash's content browser. I will assign it to the road mesh and then adjust its tiling, just like we did before with our ground surface material, ensuring it looks natural and seamless. Now let's add some impressive rock walls along the side of our road. I will reselect our curve, and from the content browser, I'll grab some of these massive rock walls, which I actually downloaded from Quixel. I will drag them onto the scene and select scatter on selection, and just like that, they're scattered along our curve. I will set the density mode to count, then I will scroll down to the parallel widths and set the section to left because I only want these walls to appear on the left side of the road. I'll then increase the distance to push them outwards from the curve. I'll also set their z-axis rotation to 180 degrees to ensure they're facing the correct way. Then fine-tune their density and scale. Finally, I will give them a slightly sloping look by adjusting their rotation on the x-axis. And to make them blend even better, While this scatter group is still selected, I'll use the edit material option and simply darken their tint a bit. Simple yet effective. Now let's add some foliage to those imposing rock walls. I will grab some fern plants from the content browser, and with our first rock wall scatter group selected, drag them onto the scene and select scatter on selection. I will then adjust their density and scale to get a nice distribution. To make these ferns look more natural, growing higher up on the walls, I will scroll down to the feature masking section and increase the min height mask. Watch how the ferns now only appear on the upper portions of the rock faces. Next, I want to add another layer of rocky detail in front of these large walls, but with lower height. So I will select my second rocky formation from the content browser, making sure our curve is still selected. I will drag this new formation onto the scene and again choose scatter on selection. Just like with the first wall, I will scroll down to the parallel width, set the section to left, increase the distance, and set the z-axis rotation to 100 degrees to orient them correctly. To make this second rocky formation look more natural and less uniform, I will play with the min scale and max scale sliders, adding some nice size variations. Alright, now let's add some more foliage to this second rocky wall. I will select some fern and flower assets from the content browser, and with the second rocky wall scatter group selected, drag them onto the scene and choose scatter on selection. I will then adjust their density to get a good coverage. Now, to add even more natural variation to the ferns on our first larger rock wall, I will select their scatter group and subtly tweak the angle mask in the feature masking section. Now, you can see how the ferns now favor certain angles of the rock surface, making them look more organically placed. And actually, we can do this with the second plants layer too. Alright, now let's blend some materials onto our landscape. I will select 3 different ground materials from the content browser and drag them onto the landscape, choosing Apply Blend Material. Next, I will scroll down to the tiling section and activate Enable Breakup Tiling to avoid obvious repetitions. Then I will play with the R weight and G weight sliders to get a nice blend between our first 2 landscape materials. The next step is to shape the terrain to add more visual interest. I will switch to landscape mode and select the sculpt tool. I'm going to raise the area behind our first rocky wall, creating a higher elevation where our trees will eventually sit. Then I will use the sculpt tool again to lower the terrain on the other side of the road, creating a more hilly and sloped landscape around our relatively even road surface. To make these sculpted areas look more natural, I will use the smooth tool to blend the elevations and remove any harsh edges. Now that our landscape has some shape, it's time to add trees. I'll head back to the select mode, search for some tree assets. These are from the fantastic Conifer Trees Biome Pack, and you can find the link to purchase it in the description. After selecting a few varieties, I will scatter them onto the landscape. I will then adjust the density and scale of the trees to get a good distribution across the landscape. Now, we need to control where these trees appear. I will scroll down to the proximity mask section and bring up the proximity table, but before that, do not forget to pin this window. First of all, let's add a new layer on the table and then add our road scatter group to this layer. I will then adjust the distance and width to prevent trees from growing directly on or too close to the road. Next, I don't want trees growing through our rocky walls either, so I will add another new layer to the proximity table and select our second lower rocky wall group, adding it to this second layer. I will then adjust the distance for this layer to create a clear zone around those rocks as well. Let's increase the density of the trees a bit and fine-tune the distance for this second proximity layer for better results. Finally, to make sure our trees stand upright even on the steeper parts of our sculpted landscape, I will go to the rotation properties and adjust the surface align slider. This will make the trees orient themselves vertically regardless of underlying terrain angle. Now let's add some ground rocky meshes to create a natural shoulder for our road. I will select our curve again, grab one of these rocky meshes from the content browser, drag it onto the scene and select scatter on selection. I will increase the distance in the parallel width section to push them out from the curve, forming that shoulder. Then I will tweak their density and scale. Here's a key point. I'm setting the z-axis rotation to 180 degrees and the section to the right in parallel width. The reason for right and not both is crucial here. If I set it to both, that 180 degree rotation would apply to meshes on both sides, making the ones on the left face the wrong way. By doing it on one side at a time, we maintain precise control. I will do the same process for left side as well. Next, let's scatter some flowers and ferns right on these road shoulder. Just like we've done multiple times before, I will select them, drag them over and tweak their density and scale to add some natural beauty. To prevent these shoulder flowers from growing on the actual road, I will add the road as a proximity object for this scatter group. I will increase the distance to create a clear border and then adjust the density to make them look just right along the shoulder. Finally, I want to scatter some general plants across the rest of the landscape, filling in those empty areas but excluding our road and rocky walls. So I will select some plants from the content browser, scatter them on the landscape, and then open their proximity mask table. After pinning the window, I will add the road as a proximity object in a new layer and adjust its distance to keep trees off the path. Then I will add a second new layer and select our second rocky wall, adding it as another proximity object and adjusting its distance as well. With these masks in place, I can now fill those empty landscape areas with plants, precisely controlling where they grow. This level of control and speed achieved with just a few clicks thanks to Dash is absolutely insane. To achieve a really impactful lighting setup, I'm gonna use Ultra Dynamic Sky. This is an incredibly powerful sky system that makes global lighting a breeze. You can find a link to purchase it in the description if you're interested. First, I'll tweak the time of the day slider to get a general feel. But for more precise control over the sun's angle, I'll activate the sun's position option. Then by adjusting the longitude and latitude sliders, we can quickly dial in that perfect sunset vibe, bathing our scene in warm, long shadows. Next, to add depth and atmosphere, I will activate volumetric fog. Then I'll increase the main fog density and decrease the cloud coverage slightly to create a more dramatic and moody look. Okay, that's looking pretty good for our overall lighting. Now, for some crucial road details, let's add some concrete barriers along the edge of our road. I'll head to Dash's content browser, select our barrier mesh, and with our road curves still selected, drag the barriers onto the scene and choose scatter on selection. I will increase the distance in the parallel width section to ensure we have barriers on both sides of the road. Then I will set the density to count and adjust the number of barriers to get the right spacing. Alright, let's add some more grass, specifically into the gaps between our existing shoulder flowers and these new barriers. So I will select our shoulder ground mesh, drag some grass from the content browser onto it, and select scatter on selection. I'll adjust the density here, and then I would repeat the same process for the shoulder on the other side of the road. Finally, I will select this grass scatter group, scroll down to its proximity mask, and pin the window. I will add the concrete barriers as a proximity mesh and increase the distance, just like we've done multiple times before, to ensure the grass doesn't grow directly into or through our barriers. Now, to showcase our beautiful new environment, we'll quickly set up a camera and find some cool angles. It's a pretty straightforward process of adding a camera and tweaking its focal length and etc. Dash actually comes with its own fantastic camera tool, which offers even more control, but we might save that for a future video. However, there's another feature I simply cannot postpone showing you because it's so incredibly useful and genially cool: the physics drop tool. This is an absolute game changer for adding realistic details to your scenes with minimal effort. Let me quickly show you how it works. For example, I will grab a simple brick mesh from the content browser and drag it into the scene. Instead of scattering it, I'll select physics drop. It instantly falls, respecting gravity. Now, from the dash ribbon, if I select the duplicate option, watch how it generates more bricks, each falling and settling with realistic physics. This is just awesome. Even if these bricks are a bit irrelevant to our current road set, it perfectly showcased the power. So let's try it with something else, like this wood beam again. I'll drag it into the scene and select physics drop, and then use the duplicate option. You can see how they fall, tumble, and settle just like real object reacting to gravity on the scene. It's incredibly satisfying and quick for adding piles of debris or scattered elements. And it gets even better. Dash also allows us to paint meshes with physics using the physics paint tool. I'll grab some small stones from the content browser, and while the control key is held, select the physics paint tool. Now we have a brush-like tool with controllable size and other parameters. As I paint them onto the ground, you can see them dropping and settling with physics, creating realistic piles of small stones instantly. This also is incredibly cool and efficient for adding fine details to any surface. And there you have it, from a blank landscape to this detailed procedural road environment, all built with incredible speed and control thanks to Polygonflow's Dash plugin for Unreal Engine. We've just scratched the surface of Dash's capabilities today, from its intelligent content browser and powerful masking tools to its dynamic curve-based scattering and awesome physics simulation. It truly streamlines complex environment creation within Unreal, making powerful PCG accessible to everyone. A massive thank you to Polygonflow for providing Dash and making this video possible. You can find the link to purchase Dash along with links to Ultra Dynamic Sky and the Conifer Trees biome, all in the description below. If you found this useful, hit that like button, subscribe for more Unreal Engine tips and creative workflows, and let me know in the comments what you would like to see next. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.